My name is Tobias Hill, I'm 17 years old. I'm a college student studying creative media in Exeter College, and I have autism and dyslexia. Through my life, I have always had a great imagination and creativity. When I was in year 8, I discovered my true passion for drawing. My favourite thing to do while growing up was to rebuild my Lego Hero Factory and make them into different transformers or characters of my own creation. I think Lego is one of the best toys ever invented. It helps inspire creativity and imagination. In fact, believe it or not, it's also helped inspire this documentary. Sometimes I can get locked onto something so specifically is that my mind locks onto that and I keep watching it over and over again. And I watch it and I love it the first time I see it, but eventually it dies down and gets a little boring, you know what I mean? And when I switch to something else, I automatically stop watching the other thing and focus on the what I'm on now, but then eventually I could come back to the other thing, but I would like it the same way as I did before, not really a bad thing. Sometimes I can get locked onto something permanently, like when I was younger I saw the Transformers cover for their first movie and I loved Optimus Prime's blue head, so I decided blue was going to be my favourite colour from then on, and it still is today. And I have 3 prime characters in my head that they're just for me, no one else, is where I run downstairs in the front room. That helps my imagination grow, and those 3 characters is what I focus primarily on. They help coordinate my imagination, they are where I can create stories in my head just for me, and I can put all the things I like into it without any legal consequences. Yeah, so my autism can be good and bad at the same time, but mostly good for my creativity and imagination. I just want to keep my life with creativity, and I would never trade my autism or dyslexia for anything in the world. My favourite thing to do with my autism and dyslexia is to create superheroes and different characters, one of them being which is Blue Thunderstorm, my first superhero creation. I created him when I was year 8, you should have seen him, he looked completely different, but yeah, I really enjoyed working on art and creating different characters, but now I've expanded my superhero universe. I've created different characters, lots of backstories, superpowers, making different characters have their identities and emotions, but I enjoy a lot. Well, when I create a superhero, it feels like I'm focused on that primarily, and that superhero is all that matters. But Blue Thunderstorm, he's differently. He's the one I think about 24/7, and I really had a good chance drawing him all the time. In fact, I've expanded on his design a bunch of times. I really hope to one day bring back to life, like one day put him on the big screen, but I hope one day that Blue Thunderstorm will inspire a kid to draw their own superhero universe. I just hope my story inspires them. I just love my autism, helped me come up with new ideas and different I just love how my autism helps me come up with new ideas and characters. I hope that one day draw comics about my characters and just get the feel for it. I just want to keep expanding my superhero universe, keep thinking of new ideas. I just hope you guys will support me from afar. I just love to come up with new characters and ideas. I hope to one day turn my superhero universe into a movie saga or a TV series with different characters. I especially hope to turn Blue Thunderstorm into a comic book one day. That is my dream in life. I'm gonna keep going and keep moving on with my autism and dyslexia, but I would never change for the world. So first off, for our guests, I would like to introduce you all to my parents who have supported me my entire life. Everybody, Katie and Graham Hill.
AKA Mum and Dad.
No, I'm not saying that.
What question's that?
It's the same one as growing up. I just made it so it makes it easier. So what was Tobias like growing up?
Tobias was a normal, happy baby growing up. He used to get very interested in certain subjects, various interests.
So, he enjoyed dinosaurs, so that probably was his first sort of fascinational subject. So where, he would have toys and he would have books that he could then be able to describe each dinosaur by name and its appearance and what it does, whether it was like a herbivore or carnivore. Enjoyed watching films and programs about dinosaurs, even had his bedroom decorated.
That's a pain. Bedroom
Decorated
with
dinosaurs. And loved all things about dinosaurs. And as then he sort of got to probably more sort of preschool age, turned his fascination into Transformers. So again, wanted to collect the Transformers, wanted to watch anything to do with Transformers, whether that be the films or the television programme. Katie decorated his bedroom to reflect his Transformers, so his Optimus Prime was his hero, but he also obviously had Megatron and Bumblebee that he enjoyed.
He also had to dress up.
Yeah, he liked dressing up with that in terms of those sort of characters. And then obviously later on moved from Transformers into Pokemon. And absolutely showed sort of his level of intelligence around what they did, how they evolved, where they came from, what they did, and just researched all the time. It was his absolute fascination, but ultimately in terms of his knowledge around that subject was outstanding.
School was tricky for Tobias. Not only did he have the autism, but obviously he had dyslexia as well, which was probably more of a hindrance to him than any of his autism. But at school, everybody loved him.
Yeah.
All the teachers loved him, said he was wonderful, he was so polite. He got little awards for being the most polite child in school, which we were very proud of. So his group of 2 or 3 friends used to always play Power Ranger role playing or Transformers, and Tobias was very much the one that instigated that and controlled the narrative because of the fact that he was the expert in that subject.
I think, the big thing for us was around, when we would speak to Tobias's teachers, would be how proud we were in terms of the feedback we would get about how hard he works, and that he wouldn't allow, whether that be his autism or his dyslexia, to stop him from doing stuff. So whilst we absolutely knew it was sort of barriers for him, he just would absolutely work twice as hard to be able to achieve certain things. And ultimately, as his teachers got to understand him and understand exactly how to get the best out of Tobias, it was a good partnership in terms of what Tobias was bringing to the table, just versus what obviously his teachers were doing to meet him halfway within that. But like what Katie described, it's around, I think we're just proud about how polite and well-mannered and how well-behaved he was, because there absolutely would have been times where he would find things challenging, but he would absolutely be so determined to do it rather than have a tantrum or get really upset about it. He was really determined to overcome those challenges, which, for us, we couldn't have asked for anything more.
Secondary school, we had to let him go a bit.
Yeah.
Which was a big thing for us.
The one concern we had when we obviously understood when he was going into secondary school and what his tutor group would be, was that he would only have one person from his primary school in his tutor group, which gave us a bit of concern in terms of how Tobias would cope with that. But equally, he coped. But equally, what we also recognised would be is obviously the subjects was far more specific, far more detailed. So whereas ultimately in primary school it was very much more light touch, there was a lot more sort of imaginational play, all of those sort of things. Going into secondary school, when we talk about things like maths, English, history, all of those sort of areas, we recognised that would be some challenges for Tobias in terms of overcoming some of those stuff. So I think for us, when it came to then choosing Tobias's options, we were led by him around what does that look like. So things like art clearly was a real strength for Tobias. He loved the creativity, he loved the teacher, all of those sort of things within that. So it really unlocked that sort of positivity and that determination within that. Similar to drama within that, it was all about trying to make sure that we were unlocking his ability and his talent to really get the best out of him for his GCSEs. And the great thing would be is that the secondary school themselves were really supportive in terms of the subjects that he chose.
Tobias's art GCSE he was particularly enthusiastic about. Again, there wasn't specifically a subject, a topic I should say, within the subject, so he used his current interest at the time, being that of Pokemon, to and dinosaurs and Transformers. So when you have a look at his final piece, it has pretty much brought in his whole childhood and growing up and all his interests into that one final piece.
Yeah.
and he did really well, and his art teacher again thought he was amazing.
Yeah, we were really pleased with Tobias's GCSEs. I think, could he have worked harder? Yes.
Could any child?
But then, could any
teenager.
child work harder? Absolutely, kind of thing. So there was a level of getting that routine into place for Tobias, making sure that he wasn't being distracted by either his brother and sister or by technology and his iPad and his PlayStation and stuff like that. However, you know, he entered into his GCSE exams. He was calm, he was considered. You know, yes, you could see he was nervous within that, but again, we couldn't have asked for anybody, you know, the dedication that he gave within that kind of thing.
When Tobias finished his GCSEs and wanted to go to college, we had to do a lot of preparation when it came to him being able to be independent. It involves going from a little village into a city independently on his own. So he had to catch a train, which he does now independently, read train timetables, plan journeys, and he's did a lot of work into being able to do that independently.
Yep.
He has done amazingly well. He's goes off into college. He enjoys his course, which is I think half a battle for any parent. His spare time, he's quite happily wandering around the city, into shops, and
Yes, his confidence has definitely grown in terms of being more independent in that sense. So quite happily go into a restaurant and order himself some food. Clearly, you know, relies on a train timetable, which doesn't necessarily go to plan. So has on several occasions had to navigate catching a bus. But yeah, no, absolutely, he's been able to sort of really navigate some of those challenges and with confidence.
so we always knew Tobias was different from his peers from a young age. Just the way he didn't overly interact with the other children. He preferred to play on his own, play with his own toys, play with the toys that held his interest at the time.
He struggled to give eye contact through conversations, which is a sign where a child is autistic, that they potentially don't engage as much as they should do, not necessarily looking at people's facial expressions, stuff like that. Would also struggle to recognise different emotions around whether someone was happy, whether they were sad, or whatever. That would sort of go over Tobias's head at a young age, really, around understanding how people were being emotional.
Tobias had some separation anxiety when it came to primary school and nursery, which again was a hurdle which he overcame, and he overcame that with routine, and again routine and not dealing with change that well is another sign of autism. With Tobias, it was also noted that change was a big thing for him. We had to plan ahead, or try to plan ahead, to assist with any change. For examples, when we wanted to go on holiday as a family, that would pose a big task for us, because we'd have to look at where we were going, show him photos, get him familiar with where he was going. We'd have to write down a routine and go through it so we knew exactly what time of day we were leaving, how long it would take to get there, what time things were happening. Anything out of that ordinary would sort of unstable him. He used to like to know where he was going, how long it was going to take, and what was happening. And again, those are signs of autism. So when we had thoughts that Tobias could be autistic, obviously that coincided with signs of dyslexia. So it was a bit of a battle with the primary school to recognise that these two things could be happening at the same time. So when we mentioned about his autism, they were like, yeah, but it could be fine, it could be different. We worried about his how he was progressing academically, and they said, well, if it is autism, that could be holding him back. So we ended up having to, along with the school and educational psychologists, bring them in and get referrals via the GP to paediatricians. And bless him, he had a lot of appointments, which he did really well. A lot of them, I mean, the experts were very good at at talking to him, and as soon as Tobias could start talking about his area of interest, whether that be dinosaurs or Transformers, it was a pretty much, they didn't need to say anything else. He just carried on chatting and chatting and chatting. But yeah, it was probably from the age of 7, 8, he got his final diagnosis of autism after about 2 years of going through the process.
Assessments and stuff. Yeah.
Assessments. Back in 2020, with the COVID pandemic, we really worried about how the change of routine, especially with school, would affect him. And yes, there was a struggle with homeschooling, because I'm not a teacher, you're not a teacher, and we had to deal with his dyslexia as well, being that he probably needed more help than what his siblings needed, and also what his peers needed. But that whole change of routine, and then also going back into school, he did cope with it really well. But with Tobias, how he copes with it is a lot to do with the preparation.
Yeah.
And if we can prepare him for it, he can do anything.
He also did a lot of exercising as well during COVID, so that was another thing that was really important to Tobias, was his, obviously, because again it sort of helped him with his focus, and he got you signed him up, didn't you, to sort of a running sort of
race it's called Race at Your Own Pace, and we could sign him up to do 30 miles over the month, and he'd go off and do it, and he would get his reward at the
got
end.
medal for that.
Got medals for it.
Got pictures and stuff like that. So that again, it was just but that was something that he enjoyed. It was something that was structured. Definitely in terms of sort of when we were obviously in the pandemic, it got him outside. It just helped in terms of just how he was planning his day and his routines, really.
I think what people find, or parents find, with children that have autism is they need to learn how to regulate themselves.
Yeah.
When he was younger, obviously he used to have episodes of like an emotional outburst where he couldn't regulate how he was feeling, and he couldn't process it and think about it. As he got older, he started to be able to regulate himself, and he found that, I think, with the help with COVID and running around the block or doing his miles. So by running during COVID, he regulated himself by that exercise, and now when he needs regulating, Tobias will run. He'll run, and he gets fit and healthy, and
Next, we have someone who's been a big help with both my art and my creativity. Everyone, Mark Brooks, my old art teacher. Okay. So, how exactly did you meet Tobias?
So Tobias, as I recall, was in my year 9 class. Well, actually, maybe even earlier in that, year 8. And so I got to know Tobias very early when he was at Clisvale. And in fact, Tobias used to come along to art clubs, which we used to run on a Friday. So that really was where I first met Tobias and actually got to know him. Well, how long do you want this interview to be? Because there's an awful lot. I mean, one of the things that I don't know whether you want a specific one, but I mean, one of the characters that Tobias came up with, Blue Thunder, which may well have kind of changed now, but but Blue Thunderstorm, that character, certainly there were lots and lots of ideas for that one. Yeah, so I mean, from year 8, so that's 4 years, basically. Yeah, 4 years, properly kind of. But it was more than just in the lessons. As I say, I used to see Tobias most lunchtimes, didn't we? I think Tobias is has fantastic creativity, a real, an incredible imagination. Some of the ideas and the detail and the histories and the background that he would create for his characters were really, really well thought out and very in-depth. But it was focused on a particular topic, so it wasn't necessarily about landscapes or portraits or still lives. It was always about superheroes, and within that kind of boundary, very, very creative. Well, it was really amazing. I mean, it helps if you get on with people, and I think that Tobias and I hit it off right away, because Tobias loves art and I obviously love art as well. So we actually got on really well as two people. And that really, I think, is very important when you're also trying to teach somebody, because they need to respect you and what you're saying, and always Tobias was very respectful. So certainly. I mean, other students with autism that I've taught, autism is very varied, and we see that in art. It comes out in different kind of ways, but certainly the way that although certainly Tobias is unique, the way that I teach other students with autism has definitely been improved having taught Tobias. There's no doubt about that. Oh my gosh. That is a tough question because there's an awful lot of stuff, but I think probably, I'm thinking, on the one hand, I'm thinking the T-Rex coursework final piece I really liked that, but if I'm honest, the exam piece I really liked. So the exam piece was basically a piece of work that was made up with lots and lots of smaller separate drawings that were then put together into one big drawing, one big piece of work, and I really liked that, just for the variety. And I'm hoping it's up on the wall somewhere in an art gallery or something like that. Framed on the wall, great. Well, so I mean that's certainly Pokemon. I mean the Pokemon world was all the way through, and that's without doubt the main topic. And I think what Tobias loved about Pokemon was all the different stories behind all the different characters, and also how they all interact with each other. That was the thing that he really loved, and that came out. Although there were other things that came in as well. There was a bit of Spider-Man, there was a bit of T-Rex, and a bit of Transformers and stuff. But it was always Pokemon was most important. In some respects, it's quite hard to ask or to answer that question, because obviously I'm not seeing Tobias as often. But one thing that is certainly true is that Tobias has still got that passion for art, and that's really important if you want to improve and get better. You've got to actually love what you do. And I know that there's, I'm sure that the character Blue Thunderstorm has kind of evolved. He's already evolved from Blue Thunder to Blue Thunderstorm, and I'm sure there's more and more to come from that as well. So there is a difference. I mean, certainly if you're teaching a student with autism, you have to be very clear about your expectations, about the structure of what you're looking for. You have to have closed questions. You have to have a clear set of guidance about what your expectations are for a piece of work. So that certainly, if I'm teaching students without autism, sometimes you won't have to go to the same degree of instruction. Having said that, when you're teaching a student with autism is that they will follow the instructions that you give, and so you often get a much fuller kind of answer, if you like, than students who do not, who perhaps might forget certain things or not take the advice that's been given. So, and I think specifically in relation to Tobias, certainly, I had to be clear what my expectation was for his book, what I expected to be on certain pages, the kind of materials that were going to get him a good grade. And then the great thing is, but as I've mentioned previously in the interview, Tobias would take all of that on board and would act on that. That's why he ultimately did well. My gosh, I thought it was an easy question to end with. I think that what I've really enjoyed about Tobias is just actually the way he is as a person. It's not so much the art. The art's great and it's been lovely seeing it, but actually it's the way that Tobias is. Always very positive, very friendly. Always the great thing I always used to like about Tobias is you give him advice and he'll really listen to that advice and then act on that advice. And often students won't do that. We'll try and help students, give them advice, and they won't go with it. But always you knew with Tobias that everything that you said was being kind of soaked up, like he was a sponge or something. So that's really what I liked. But it was just basically his character, I think, if I'm honest.
Now I'd like to introduce you to someone who's in a big help with my maths GCSEs and my maths learning. Everyone, Peggy, my maths tutor. Good. So, how's it been working with Tobias lately?
I have thoroughly enjoyed working with Tobias. It's been an honour.
Oh, could you just speak up a little bit?
Oh, okay. Sorry. I have thoroughly enjoyed working with Tobias. It's been an honour. It hasn't been easy. I'm very old. It's many years since I've done this, but I have enjoyed his humour. I've enjoyed his application of things we've learned, and his little moments of quiet genius when he makes a connection. Can I just explain one of the humour moments first? I will never forget the day the man ate all the cake at the wedding reception. And Tobias had to work out how much of the cake he'd eaten. We still laugh about that. I can't remember a specific example, but it would be something like when we'd covered a new concept, which wasn't easy, and a few questions on, he remembered it and he applied it and he went through a complex question using it. Right. When we first started, I was scared because I didn't feel that we were communicating. I felt he didn't necessarily want to see me, but now I feel like he's a friend and I can chat to him like I chat to my husband. It's like working with an adult. My favourite moments are when he does well, when he's done the homework I've set him and it goes over into the work we're doing that day. I like it when we can just banter and see the humour. I love it when he keeps his head down and keeps focused and doesn't try and talk about something else other than the maths. But then again, I love it when he does tell me about the other things that are happening in his life. It's all been a really good experience for me. It's taught me patience. It's taught me to learn his cues, to understand and know when he's concentrating and I mustn't interrupt him, and to learn to know when he needs help. Oh, totally. It's a totally different set of experiences now. I was a bit nervous about upsetting Tobias because I hadn't worked with an autistic child before. But it's taught me so much about understanding how neurodiversity works and how interesting his brain is. I like people who are direct. I like people who stop me in my tracks. I like people who don't let me witter on when they're thinking about something else. I've worked with him thinking about something else. Thinking about something else.
And now you know how I work and how none of my ideas would be what they are today without my autism. Autism has given me such a unique imagination and creativity. I wish to use my imagination to create more characters, stories, and to expand my universe and to inspire others. I will always use my imagination to help inspire others and create new characters and heroes because creativity is wonderful.